But when I was reading this, Jesus tells them, love your God with all your heart, all your soul, right? Jesus does not deny what the lawyer says. So there must be some truth to what's being said here. Do this and you will live. And so you have this lawyer hearing that. Now, I don't know about you guys, but to love God with everything of me sounds easy, but it's really hard sometimes. And then to have that unconditional love, right? That love that God has for me, for somebody else. Now, if you do what I want you to do, it's pretty easy. But the moment you start challenging things I think or things I feel, it becomes really difficult to continue giving you that. I'm a parent. I got 4 boys. Matter of fact, one of them turned 15 today. I wish he was here, and they make it really hard to unconditionally love them all the time, even though I'm a parent. I still love them, but I still think in my mind, man, I really dislike this kid right now. And so, in reality, what the lawyer heard is, so then all I got to do is figure out who my neighbor is, right? Because I already love God, right? Their understanding of loving God was just to follow the law. Just follow the law, and you're good. You love God. That's how you show love for God. But now, they're being asked to love a neighbor. So he wants to know who's his neighbor. See, now this is the interesting part, because the law tells them your neighbor is people who are just like you. Right? The people who do what you do. The people of likeness. Is how the Hebrew words it. Right? So, then I only have to love law-abiding people. Everyone else, I'm good. I don't have to love you. Matter of fact, I only have to love you if you're a Jew and a law-abiding person. If you're a Samaritan and law-abiding Gentile and law-abiding, doesn't matter. You're not a Jew. You don't look like me. You don't talk like me. You don't walk like me. But that's what he's hoping Jesus is getting ready to tell him. And Jesus does it. And Jesus says, I got a story for you. Right? I got a story for you. A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he fell into the hands of robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. See, now this is important. We read it and we go, oh man, there's a dude dead on the ground. He's naked, right? No, he's almost, there's nothing we can do to help this guy really right now, unless you're an EMT or a nurse or a doctor. But what we have to understand is this is the reason why the priest and the Levite bypassed this guy. Because he's naked. Because he's bleeding, because he's half dead. They can't talk to him, so they don't know what dialect of language he speaks. They can't see what he's wearing, because everyone in that Middle Eastern culture wore something different that identified who they were. So I just got done telling you guys that they thought the only people they needed to help were the Jews. So they need some identifying marker that lets them know this man who's half dead is a Jew just like me. And depending on how he's dressed, if he's a Jew, will determine whether I really need to help this guy. But see, the law tells them they need to help. It also tells them if they're not Jew, they don't have to. They're not obligated. It also tells them that if the man dies, the priest has just become defiled. Right? Now, for a Jew, being clean is of great importance. Right? He's a priest. He makes his living off of tithes. He makes his living off of sacrifices. And if he's unclean, he can't be paid. He can't take care of his family. He can't do certain things, right? He would have to go back to Jerusalem for a purification process for a couple of weeks in order to even be able to receive the things his family needs to live. Right? Now think about those things. Right? We have somebody who comes to a man who's broken and beaten, and he has to make a decision whether, if I'm going to do this, I take a chance of losing some things. Right? This is the hit that we don't ever talk about when we listen to the parable of the Good Samaritan. I'm going to lose some things right here if I help this guy. There's the possibility that if he's not Jew, I become defiled. If he dies, I become defiled. If he just bleeds anywhere near me, right? I can't even go within 6 feet of this man. That's what the law tells them. If I go closer than that just to find out if he's alive or if I can help him, I become defiled. My family doesn't get fed for a couple of weeks. I have to go back and do a purification, right? He's processing all these things. I have to do all these things, which makes my life difficult. And I don't know if I really want to do those things. Right? When I told you the story about what would you do, right? I said it's really easy to do stuff when it doesn't take anything from us. When it doesn't put us in a handcuffed situation to where I may have to sacrifice some things in order to be a servant. It's really easy to give them $5 of gas or to tell this girl, you don't need to get married, come with me, I'll drop you off at CPS. Or, you know what I mean? It's really easy to do things that doesn't require me to make a big sacrifice. Then you have the Levite who comes behind. He's the assistant. He's the assistant. Now, I'll move too much. I'm going to come down here. He's the assistant to the priest. Right? Now, he's thinking the same things. Well, if my boss just left this guy here, well, maybe there's a reason, right? I don't want to have to go through the same things. He's also thinking, what would it mean for me if I show up, my boss? Right? My boss just passed this guy. What would it look like if I, his subordinate, show up with this man and he just passed by? I mean, all these things are running through people's minds as they're, right? So we don't necessarily want to say that the priest and the Levite were bad people. Because people every day make choices the same way, and we don't condemn them for the choices they make. And so here we have these two guys, right? The funny thing is the priest was probably pretty wealthy. He probably had an animal that he could have thrown the guy on and taken into town. Priests were well paid. You know, and so you have these two guys who are dealing with contemplation of having to make choices they don't know if they really want to make. And you got the Samaritan who sees them. Sees this man hurt, beat, broken, busted and disgusted. You know, and what he does is he says he sees him, right? But a Samaritan has traveled and came where the man was. When he saw him, he took pity on him. Right? Compassion, pity drew this man to this guy who was on the ground. The thought of what I might have to do wasn't the same. Right? The Samaritan isn't worried about being paid because the Samaritan probably has a job of his own that whether he's clean or not, he's going to get paid. He still has to abide by the same laws that the priest and Levite do because he's a believing Samaritan. But he's probably not thinking, well, I probably won't get paid. He's thinking something else. Right? Samaritans and Jews did not get along. There was constant feuding going on between them. And I bet you the Samaritan didn't even think this, but the reality is, what would happen to the Samaritan if he brought this wounded Jew into town? Right? It says he had pity and he had compassion for the wounded man. Right? The first thing he thought was with his heart. There's somebody in need. What do I need to do in order to help this guy? And he jumps off and he starts to bandage and disinfect the man's cuts and bruises. Right? He starts to heal him. Wraps them all up. Right? Throws him on his donkey. And takes him into town. See, now it's interesting, man. I always tell people whenever I talk about this particular passage, when I talked about the trouble the Samaritan might get in, right? It was like in the 50s, right? I don't know if any of you guys were around the 50s. You guys all look pretty young. But imagine a black man carrying a wounded white woman into a town during those times. This is what you're looking at here.